Welcome back to another episode of, well, actually, this isn't really a RedAux review. Recently, I've noticed a lot of talk on the internet about games which were labeled as notoriously bad. Do all of these bad games deserve such titles? Are they really so bad? This is the inspiration for my new series, Not As Bad As You Think. In this series, I'll break down retro games which I've played which were put in that notoriously bad pile, and talk about both their pros and cons. Then you can decide for yourself, so pull up a chair, grab yourself a big old glass of haterade, and we'll get down to it. In today's episode, we'll be discussing Bubsy and Claw's Encounters of the Furred Kind for Super Nintendo. If you've been around retro Twitter and Twitch lately, Bubsy is a game character and even a series, which people seem to love to hate. Is all that hate warranted? And to be honest, I'm not really sure. Recently, I played through Bubsy's first installment for the Super Nintendo, and while it had its moments of frustration, there were a lot of elements of charm too. Sure, it's not the greatest game I've ever played, and when compared to games such as Super Mario World or Mega Man X, it's gonna be a letdown. Just like a lot of other Super Nintendo and Genesis titles of this era, Bubsy feels less carefully designed, and it's no masterpiece, but I would argue it's in the same design level as some of these other titles such as Tiny Toon Adventures Buster Bust Loose, Roadrunner's Death Valley Rally, Sonic the Hedgehog 3, The Lion King, Disney's Aladdin, and of course, Cool Spot. None of these games are 10 out of 10 A+ games, but they're definitely not shovelware. And I think folks would argue that they're worth playing, absolutely. And are they worth finishing? Well, maybe not. Or maybe only if you feel like it. Imperfect games from this era still have a lot of fun and a lot of love to share with us, and I think it's about time we give these titles a fair chance. Keeping that in mind, here comes my top 5 reasons Bubsy and Claw's Encounters of the Furred Kind is not as bad as you think. Reason number 5, the copious lives. The most challenging thing about Bubsy is that everything kills you. It's a one-hit death kind of experience, and when that is combined with flinging yourself bodily across the screen, you're gonna end up with lots of silly, random death. Step on a tack, stub your toe, fall in some water, I guess this bobcat can't swim, and so on. And Bubsy has a different animation for many of the different death mechanics, such as popping like a balloon after stepping on that tack, or maybe shattering into a million pieces, and he even gets absconded with by the Woolies. So it's actually okay, and I'd even say encouraged, to find out how many ways you can die in this game just to experience the different animations. You have to have a lighthearted approach to getting wrecked all the time, and this game is accompanied by starting out after each continue with 9 lives. One of the collectibles in the game are t-shirts that function as 1-ups. These are relatively easy to find, and in the earlier parts of the game, they're more accessible. So by collecting them in this early part of the game, you have more freedom, let's say, to experience deaths. Reason number 4, the fourth wall breaking. Video game characters in the early to mid-90s had to be sassy, hip, and over the top. Bubsy takes this a step further by letting you know constantly that he's aware that he's in a video game and you're his audience. The absurdity of the game's experience is not lost on him, and nevertheless, he continues to make poor choices. As Electronics Gaming Monthly called him, most hyped for a character in 1993, his way out attitude does not disappoint. Personally, I laughed so many times at the ridiculousness of this game with its fourth wall breaking and owning the ridiculousness as it goes along. Bubsy is his own best hype man, and that's for sure. Reason number 3, the password system. Games like Bubsy, where you're dying all the time, really benefit from some sort of continue system, which still for the time was not a 100% expectation. I feel like this nuance is sometimes lost on younger generations of gamers where save systems are automatic. Honestly, the password system really helps the player learn how to make that required incremental progress. In this case, I really prefer a password system over a system of limited continues, because those could be easily and rapidly exhausted, especially in the second half of this game. Without this password-based continue system, I would have put this game back on the shelf for sure. Reason number 2, Bubsy is easy to play, but hard to master. In my opinion, the game design and production team behind Bubsy understood how to get kids to try a game over and over. This is one you'd rent from your local Blockbuster Video for some silly platforming, and then by Sunday night when your mom put it back in her bag to drop off on Monday morning in the return slot, you were only 2 worlds in. You had to keep those passwords for the next time you rented a video game, because there was no way you were going to be able to master this one over the weekend. The control scheme for this game seems simple enough. There's jump, glide, and run. Not too difficult to play, but really difficult to master the controls. Bubsy's movement is even faster than Sonic, in my opinion, and there is a walk speed, a jog speed, a sprint speed, and finally a flinging yourself around the level as fast as possible out of control speed. Now, here's my number 1 gripe with this game. The movement for Bubsy is very difficult. It feels super loose, and some of his silly animations, which are part of the game, actually set him up for deaths. This is specifically a problem in the Super Nintendo game at some of the bosses. You'll find yourself able to beat a boss, but then dying on your way to the ground, or walking off a platform and dying after the boss is dead. And when you compare it to the Genesis experience of this game, Bubsy's mechanics are a little more tightly controlled in that version. There's less out-of-control movement, and the boss sequences lead to fewer unintentional deaths. And the soundtrack itself in the Genesis version is a little different in its quality. But I challenge you to ask yourself this: was this type of control system really so different than in other games at the time? If you've ever played Tiny Toon Adventures, I think you'll find it super similar. Even Sonic has some of these same mechanics. So while I found the control difficult and unsatisfying at times, it's also not so different than other games of the time. And finally, reason number 1, the level design. This is where the game really went all out. I think the depth and complexity of each level is highlighted with brightly colored, full, and lush background designs, and this adds to the overall experience. So when you brought this game home on a rental for the weekend, and you popped it in, and you got really frustrated with the control system, did you even notice how complex and interesting the level designs were? Probably not. I really think that most folks missed out on how interesting the levels are. There's multiple pathways to get you through the different stages to the goal. There are shortcuts and warps. There's checkpoints. There is different switches to flip. There's high roads and low roads, roller coasters, trains, and even spaceships. The variety itself leads these levels to be very challenging, and the player will need to spend some dedicated effort to make their way through each area. Upon reflection after beating this game, I was left with mixed feelings. Although I admit I was frustrated with some elements of the mechanics, the game itself had me laughing over and over again, whether at myself for all the silly deaths, or how ridiculous the game itself was. Even the ending sequence is ridiculous after you beat the final boss, and I'll save that for you to discover on your own. But before busting out the hammer or throwing this one out the window, I say, give it a chance. Play it for yourself before passing judgment. Sure, it's not the greatest, but you still might have some fun with it like I did, before, your mom takes it back to Blockbuster. Thank you for watching. I'm looking forward to continuing this series with more reviews. If you have a suggestion for a game to review, please post it to the comments section below. And check out our live stream on Twitch for family-friendly gaming content, both modern and retro, and thank you for stopping by. I have many concerns. Did I live? Nope, gosh darn it, you guys. T. Okay, S-T. G. R. T. N.
What could possibly go wrong?
So, That's hilariously adorable, though. Alright, buddy, let's go. One-shotted, and we didn't even die stupidly. Yes!